They're staring now, not because you changed, but because the truth finally caught up with them. That smirk you wore. It wasn't confidence, it was certainty. While they laughed, doubted, whispered behind closed doors, you already saw the ending. Every move they thought was clever was already predicted, every trap already mapped, and now the silence is loud. The jokes stopped. The faces dropped. Because nothing terrifies people more than realizing you were never confused. You were just waiting. You saw the truth before they did, and that's the part that keeps replaying in their heads like a bad joke they can't laugh at anymore. While they were busy reacting, you were observing. While they were emotional, you were analytical. You weren't louder, you weren't desperate, you weren't trying to convince anyone. You just watched patterns repeat themselves, watched egos trip over their own reflections, watched people mistake noise for intelligence. They thought awareness looked dramatic, impulsive, chaotic. They never imagined it could look calm, quiet, almost bored. You knew how this story works because you've seen it before. Same characters, different masks. Same promises, different mouths. You recognized the setup long before the punchline landed. Every fake smile, every forced alliance, every sudden shift in tone, it all followed a rhythm. And once you hear the rhythm, the song loses its magic. They were improvising, thinking they were clever, thinking unpredictability was power. You understood that chaos always exposes itself eventually. It always overplays its hand. They mistook your silence for confusion. That was their favorite mistake. Silence makes insecure people uncomfortable, so they fill it with assumptions. They decided you didn't know enough, didn't see enough, didn't understand enough. Meanwhile, you were connecting dots they didn't even know existed. You weren't learning the rules, you were studying the people who break them. You weren't guessing motives, you were reading habits. You noticed who panicked under pressure, who lied too quickly, who needed validation like oxygen. You didn't rush because you didn't need to. When you already know the ending, there's no urgency. There's patience. There's restraint. There's a strange kind of amusement in watching people sprint toward conclusions you've already walked past. They were chasing control, trying to manage perceptions, trying to stay ahead of consequences. You were letting time do the dirty work. Time exposes inconsistencies better than confrontation ever could. And the funniest part, they gave you confirmation without realizing it. Every overreaction, every defensive joke, every sudden change in behavior validated what you already knew. Truth has a way of irritating lies just by existing. You didn't have to accuse anyone. You didn't have to raise your voice. Their discomfort spoke for you. Their need to explain themselves, when no one asked, said everything. Now they're replaying moments, searching conversations, reanalyzing your expressions, wondering when you figured it out. That's the itch they can't scratch. The realization that you were never behind, never lost, never fooled. You were ahead the whole time, smiling not because you were winning, but because you already knew how foolish they would look when awareness finally caught up and the mask slipped and the room went quiet, and they understood that the joke was never on you but on them. And that awareness doesn't announce itself. It waits and watches and remembers and lets people reveal exactly who they are without ever being into silence. There without ever being into silence. Quietly into silence. And that shift was louder than any insult they ever threw your way. At first, the jokes came easy. Laughing at you was convenient, comfortable, communal. It bonded them. Mockery always does. It gave them a sense of superiority without requiring intelligence, courage, or effort. They laughed because it made them feel safe, because as long as someone else was the punchline, they didn't have to look too closely at themselves. And you let them laugh. That was the dangerous part they never understood. Laughter creates blind spots. When people are amused, they stop paying attention. They assume the story is already written, that the roles are fixed. They decided you were predictable, manageable, irrelevant. They laughed in groups, nodded at each other, reinforced the narrative until it felt like fact. And while they were busy enjoying the sound of their own voices, something started to change. Not around you. Around them. The jokes didn't land the same anymore. The smiles lingered a second too long. The laughter became forced, slightly delayed, uncertain. Silence doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in. First, there's hesitation. Then there are pauses where jokes used to be. Then there are glances exchanged mid-laughter, as if someone suddenly remembered something they weren't supposed to forget. That's when doubt enters the room. Doubt doesn't announce itself either. It just sits there, uncomfortable, asking questions no one wants to answer. Why isn't this funny anymore? Why isn't he reacting? Why isn't she breaking? Why does it feel like we're laughing alone? You didn't confront them. You didn't defend yourself. You didn't explain. And that robbed them of momentum. Bullies need resistance. Mockery needs reaction. Without it, the performance feels pointless. Their laughter echoed back at them hollow and awkward. Suddenly, they were aware of their own voices, their own behavior, their own need for validation. Silence began replacing jokes, because jokes require confidence, and confidence collapses the moment people realize they might be wrong. The silence scared them, because silence leaves room for thought. In silence, people remember things they ignored. Patterns resurface. Moments replay. They start connecting dots backward, tracing timelines, questioning assumptions. They remembered times you didn't react when expected. Times you smiled when they thought you'd break. Times you walked away without explanation. Silence turned those moments into evidence. Not proof, just enough doubt to poison certainty. And once certainty is gone, laughter dies. Nobody wants to laugh when they're unsure who the joke is really about. Nobody wants to mock someone who might be watching, calculating, understanding more than they let on. The room changed. Conversations shifted. Your name stopped being used casually. It was mentioned carefully now, if at all, because silence had reframed you. Silence made you unpredictable. Silence gave you weight. They started filling the quiet with nervous energy. Over-explaining, justifying, rewriting stories, pretending the jokes never meant anything. Pretending it was all harmless. Silence doesn't argue back, but it remembers everything. It watches people contradict themselves. It notices who gets defensive. It notices who avoids eye contact. It notices who suddenly wants peace after enjoying chaos for so long. Their laughter didn't disappear because you demanded respect. It disappeared because they felt exposed. Because mockery stopped feeling safe. Because somewhere between the last forced laugh and the first uncomfortable pause, they realized the power dynamic had shifted, and they weren't in control of it anymore. And now the quiet sits between them every time they see you, reminding them that laughter is easy, but silence knows things. And once silence starts asking questions, it doesn't stop, and they feel it pressing. And every time the room goes still, and no one knows what to say anymore. One who knows what to say anymore. You played calm while they played foolish, and that contrast is what unraveled them without you lifting a finger. Calm unnerves people who rely on chaos to feel powerful. They expect panic, defensiveness, emotional reactions they can poke and provoke. Instead, they got stillness. You didn't rush your words. You didn't scramble to explain yourself. You didn't match their volume or their urgency. You stayed level while they kept escalating, mistaking noise for control and movement for progress. They confused calm with weakness, because that's how shallow minds measure strength. If someone isn't reacting, they must not understand. If someone isn't angry, they must not care. That assumption made them careless. They exposed their intentions openly, joked too loudly, schemed too obviously, overplayed every hand. While they were busy proving something, you were watching how badly they needed to. Calm gave you vision. Foolishness gave them tunnel sight. You noticed how quickly they contradicted themselves, how often their stories shifted depending on who was listening. You noticed the desperation hidden behind confidence, the insecurity masked as arrogance. Calm lets you hear the cracks in people's voices, see the tension in their movements, feel the imbalance in their energy. They were performing. You were perceiving. They were reacting to the moment. You were tracking the pattern. Foolish people believe momentum equals victory. They rush. They interrupt. They dominate conversations. They fill space so no one else can think. Calm people don't need space to be filled. They wait. They let others talk themselves into corners. Every extra word your opponents speak is a gift, especially when you're not competing for attention. You understood that restraint is unsettling to those who rely on excess. They mistook your composure for ignorance and walked right past their own red flags waving in the open. They underestimated how much information leaks when someone thinks they're winning. The jokes got crueler. The behavior got bolder. The masks slipped faster. Foolishness always speeds up when it thinks it's safe. Calm just observes the acceleration and takes notes. You never corrected them. Correction would have warned them. You never challenged them publicly. Challenge would have sharpened them. You let them stay foolish, comfortable in their assumptions, confident in the wrong conclusion. Calm isn't passive. It's strategic patience. It's knowing when silence speaks louder than facts. It's understanding that some people only learn when they trip over their own certainty. As they grew louder, you grew quieter. As they became more certain, you became more detached. That imbalance unsettled them. They couldn't read you. They couldn't provoke you. They couldn't predict your response. Foolishness panics when it can't map behavior. Calm becomes a mirror that reflects their chaos back at them without distortion. They played the game emotionally, impulsively, desperately trying to control perception. You played it mentally, slowly, allowing reality to surface on its own timeline. And the more foolish they became, the calmer you looked. And the calmer you looked, the more foolish they appeared, until the contrast was impossible to ignore, and everyone could see who was performing, and who was aware, and who was reacting, and who was waiting, and who understood that true control never rushes, and never shouts, and never explains itself, while others unravel, trying to pre-move. They were never losing in the first place, while every move was already predicted. And that realization is what stripped the excitement from their schemes and turned their confidence into quiet panic. They thought unpredictability was their advantage, that sudden shifts and secret plays made them smarter, untouchable. They believed confusion was a weapon. But chaos always leaves fingerprints. Patterns don't disappear just because people think they're being clever. They repeat, slightly altered, just enough to fool those who don't pay attention. You paid attention. You studied behavior, not words. Promises are cheap. Intentions leak through habits, through timing, through who speaks first and who rushes to clean up the mess. You noticed how they acted when they felt secure, how they changed when pressure crept in, how quickly they reached for the same tricks when control slipped. People think they're original, but fear makes everyone predictable. Fear follows scripts. Ego follows routines. Once you recognize the script, the performance loses its power. They believed you were reacting in real time, making decisions on the fly. That illusion made them bold. They thought they were one step ahead because you weren't visibly countering them. But prediction doesn't require interference. Sometimes it requires distance. You weren't blocking moves. You were letting them play out exactly as expected. The more freedom they thought they had, the more accurately they revealed themselves. You anticipated the alliances before they formed, the betrayals before they were justified, the excuses before they were spoken. You knew who would fold under pressure, who would deflect blame, who would pretend neutrality while quietly choosing sides. None of it surprised you. The surprise was how confidently they walked into outcomes you'd already mapped. They mistook your lack of urgency for ignorance and never questioned why you seemed unbothered by developments that should have rattled you. Prediction isn't magic. It's patience combined with pattern recognition. It's understanding that most people don't change strategies. When old ones fail, they repeat them louder. When faced with resistance, they escalate. When exposed, they deny. When cornered, they accuse. You watched that cycle spin long before it reached you. You prepared mentally, emotionally, strategically, while they prepared excuses. They started sensing something was wrong when their moves stopped producing reactions. Control feels real only when someone responds the way you expect. When outcomes stay the same no matter how hard you push, doubt creeps in. They tried switching tactics, changing tone, flipping narratives, but every variation landed in the same place. That's when panic sets in. Not loud panic, but the quiet kind that tightens voices and shortens tempers. You never revealed what you knew. Knowledge held too openly becomes a target. You let them discover the limits of their influence on their own. Watching people realize their options are narrower than they believed is far more effective than telling them. Their confidence cracked, not because you exposed them, but because reality refused to cooperate with their plans. And now they replay moments, searching for the point where you figured it out, wondering how far back your awareness goes, questioning every interaction, every smile, every pause, realizing too late that, while they were improvising, you were reading from a script you'd already memorized, and every step they took led exactly where you expected. And the discomfort grows heavier each time. They understand that nothing they did was new, and nothing they planned was ever a surprise. And the scariest part is knowing you're still calm, because you're already watching the next move unfold. If your next move unfold. Realization hit them all at once, not gently, not logically, but like a delayed explosion they never saw coming. It wasn't a single moment, it was a collapse. 1 second they were comfortable in their assumptions. The next, everything they thought they knew started arguing with itself. Faces changed before words did. Smiles froze mid-expression. Eyes started searching for reassurance that wasn't there. That's the thing about realization. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't knock. It barges in and rearranges the furniture in your head. They began replaying the past obsessively, scrolling backward through memories they once dismissed. Conversations they laughed through suddenly felt heavier. Jokes sounded cruel in hindsight. Confidence felt reckless. Every moment they underestimated you started stacking up like evidence they couldn't delete. Realization doesn't shout, but it's relentless. It keeps tapping the same nerve until denial gets exhausted. You didn't announce anything. You didn't change your behavior to mark the moment. That's why it hurt more. If you had confronted them, they could have argued. If you had reacted emotionally, they could have minimized it. But realization came from within them, and that makes it inescapable. They saw it in your consistency, your calm, your refusal to scramble when things shifted. The realization wasn't that you were smart. It was that you had been aware the entire time. That awareness rewrote the power dynamic instantly. Suddenly, they weren't judging you anymore. They were judging themselves, Every action they took now carried a second layer of meaning. Was that move already anticipated? Was that reaction already expected? Were they being watched the same way they once watched others? Realization flips the mirror, and insecure people hate their reflection. Panic followed quietly, not the dramatic kind, the internal kind that tightens the chest and shortens patience. They started second, guessing every step, hesitating where they used to rush, overthinking what once felt natural. Realization stole their rhythm. They lost the ease they once had because ease only exists in ignorance. Awareness makes every move feel heavier. They tried to regain control by rewriting the narrative, pretending they always knew, pretending this was all part of the plan. But realization isn't fooled by performance. It remembers timelines. It remembers reactions. It remembers who laughed first and who went quiet last. And no amount of revision can erase the feeling of being outpaced mentally. What shattered them most was understanding that you didn't gain awareness suddenly. You didn't wake up one day enlightened. You had it before the chaos, before the jokes, before the disrespect. That meant every moment they thought they were ahead was actually them being observed. That meant the upper hand they felt was imaginary. That meant the control they enjoyed never existed. And now they moved differently around you. Cautiously, measured, afraid of revealing too much. Realization turned confidence into self-surveillance. They watch their words. They analyze your expressions. They look for signs that you know more than you say, because now they understand that silence wasn't absence. It was containment, and awareness doesn't need to prove itself once it's already been recognized. And the weight of that understanding sits on them constantly because they can't unknow it, and they can't unsee it. And every interaction reminds them that the moment they realized it all was the moment they lost the advantage entirely. You were waiting, not doubting. And that distinction is what completely escaped them until it was far too late. Doubt is noisy. It fidgets, seeks reassurance, asks questions out loud. Waiting is quiet. Waiting watches. They assumed your stillness meant uncertainty, because that's how their minds work. If they pause, it's because they're lost. If they hesitate, it's because they're afraid. They never considered that someone could be perfectly sure and still choose not to move. While they rush to prove themselves, you let time stretch. You didn't feel the need to jump at every opportunity or defend against every assumption. Waiting gave you leverage. It lets situations reveal their true shape. People reveal more when they think nothing is happening. They relax. They overstep. They expose intentions they would normally guard. You understood that urgency is a weakness disguised as ambition. They mistook patience for indecision and grew careless around you. They spoke freely, acted boldly, took shortcuts they believed you wouldn't notice. Doubt makes people retreat. Waiting makes people advance right into their own mistakes. You weren't standing still because you were unsure. You were standing still because you were letting the environment load itself with information. Waiting sharpened your timing. You didn't act when emotions were high or narratives were unstable. You waited until patterns settled, until reactions became predictable, until pressure revealed who would crack and who would lie. You watched who rushed to control outcomes and who panicked when control slipped. Doubt would have pushed you to interfere too early. Waiting allowed the truth to mature. They kept expecting a reaction that never came. That absence confused them. Confusion turned into overconfidence. Overconfidence turned into exposure. People reveal their worst instincts when they think the threat isn't moving. Waiting made you invisible without making you powerless. It let them underestimate you while you gathered clarity. You didn't wait because you were afraid of losing. You waited because you already understood the terrain. You knew when movement would matter and when it would be wasted. Waiting isn't about delay. It's about alignment. It's knowing that the right moment carries its own momentum and doesn't require force. They doubted themselves only after realizing you never doubted at all. That's when the imbalance hit them. All that time they thought you were unsure. You were actually deciding how much to reveal and how much to keep contained. You weren't asking questions because you already had answers. You weren't reacting because reactions would have benefited them. Now they replay your silence differently. It no longer looks empty. It looks deliberate, calculated, heavy with intention. Waiting exposed their impatience, their need for immediate validation, their inability to sit with uncertainty. They moved because they were afraid of stillness. You stayed still because you were comfortable inside your awareness. And that's what unsettles them most now. Knowing that while they were doubting you, you were measuring them. While they were testing boundaries, you were mapping behavior. While they were assuming confusion, you were refining certainty. Waiting wasn't passive. It was the most active decision you made. And the moment they realized, that was the moment they understood that the game was never about speed or noise or dominance, but about who could remain composed long enough to let everyone else reveal themselves without ever being pushed.